Good afternoon, members. We now select the chair for the Bills Committee on the Private Columbaria Bill. We need a member to nominate a candidate to be seconded by another member. Mr. Chen Hak-ken. I would like to nominate Mr. Yip Kok-him. Do you accept the nomination? I accept, but I would like to declare interest. This is because I am on the Board of Governors for this Tong Sin Tan. And then in 1976, it started to operate a Columbaria in Sai Kung called Po Long Tong, and in fact it is also in the process of applying for a license, but currently it doesn't have any niches to be offered for sale. Any seconder? Can I ask a question? Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Well, for this bill, without this declaration, I would have thought that Mr. Yip would be the right person. But with this piece of information available, I just doubt whether the public would find it problematic. Clerk, can anybody answer this question? So after the declaration of interest, it is up to the Bills Committee to make a decision. And then of course, when a matter is put to the vote, we have to consider the direct or indirect pecuniary interest. So when we need to vote on a motion, etc., then we have to consider this point. Mr. Wong Kok-heng, you would like to second the nomination? Thank you. Mr. Ern Leung, concerning the interest declared, can I clarify one point? Is it my understanding that Mr. Yip, in relation to Tong Sin Tan, he hasn't got any direct or indirect pecuniary interest? Just want to clarify this point first. And then a moment ago, Mr. Wu Chiu-wai raised a concern. To a certain extent, I agree with him. This is because for this bill, it is going to upset somebody, as it is controversial. So, Mr. Yip, are you worried that in the process of deliberation, if you are to chair the meetings, are you worried that it may attract criticisms? So just want to invite Mr. Yip to clarify this point. Mr. Yip, would you like to give an answer? I don't have any pecuniary interest directly. This is because I'm not receiving any salary, and I don't take part in any meetings of the board. I'm merely an advisor. In fact, I have never been there, and I am not familiar with the actual operation. For the bill, I'm going to look at the bill from the overall interest of the Community of Hong Kong. And then it was first started in 1976, so it no longer has any niches for sale. So I don't think there's any interest involved. I had consulted a legal advisor, and I've been told that there won't be a problem. So just want to share this piece of information with Mr. Leung. Madam Chen Yun-han, Mr. Yip Kok-him told us that for this particular Columbarium, no niches are being offered on sale. I want to know whether the existing ones have already been frozen. Please clarify. Mr. Yip, altogether there are 1,933 niches. All of them have been sold. 157 have already got ashes interred. 350 plus have been sold, but no ashes have been interred. This all I have got in terms of the information. The total isn't 1,900 plus. Yes, indeed, 1933. Any other questions? No? Any other nominations? Mr. Wu Chi-wai? Mr. Chairman. In this case, I would like to nominate Dr. K.K. Kwok. Dr. K.K. Kwok, do you accept the nomination? Dr. Kwok accepts. But then I think you are not on the Bills Committee. This is the private Columbaria bill. I think my secretary has already put in my application form. No, we haven't received your application. Sorry. What about Mr. Alan Leung? Mr. Leung, do you accept the nomination? I would like to nominate Dr. Kenneth Leung, Chen, but then he's not in Hong Kong, so I would rather decline the nomination. I would like to nominate Dr. Kenneth Chen, but it's impossible for me to see if he's willing to accept the nomination. He has told me that he would accept the nomination. Mr. Paul Chair. I have in my file a letter from Dr. Chen urging for my support to elect him as the deputy chair. Yes, before I came here, I asked his assistant. I would like to know whether Dr. Chen was being too modest, and was he only willing to become the deputy chair, and I asked if he could try to run for the chairmanship. And yet, in fact, his personal assistant confirmed that he would be willing to run for the post of chairmanship. Well, I'm not too sure if the Civic Party members are really sort of true to the words. Any seconder? Mr. Wu Chi-wai seconds. So we have got two candidates. Are there any other nominations? If not, then in this case, I would like to draw a line here. The nomination process has been closed. There are two candidates. Would it be a show of hands? We have to have a secret ballot. So in other words, please hand out the ballot papers. Well, I haven't had such elections for quite a period of time, so I have become unfamiliar with the process. Now, ballot papers will be given to members, and you will be given a stamp with a tick. So please stamp the tick next to the name of the candidate that you prefer. Candidate number 1, Mr. Yu Kwok Him. Number 2, Kenneth Chen Kalok. It is a secret ballot. Please do not show the ballot paper to anybody else because it is a secret ballot. You can hand over the ballot paper to our staff, but don't fold the ballot paper. Has everybody received the ballot papers? No, everybody has got one. If you have already voted, then I will say that voting is ended and staff members can no longer give out the ballot papers. Please collect them. Members, please put your ballot paper into the ballot box personally. Before you put in your ballot paper, please do not leave your seat.
Mr.
Chan Hak-ken, Mr. Ellen Leung, would you like to come forward to witness the result of the ballot? We are going to count the ballot papers, and then afterwards, with the Secretary's help, we are going to destroy all the ballot papers afterwards. Please do not leave your seat before you hand in your ballot paper. Thank you, Mr. Paul Chair. Probably is trying to call Dr. Chen. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. It's quite a close call. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. This is a blank vote, so it is not valid. Number 1.
I now announce Mr. Ip Kok Kim has got 7 votes. Mr. Kenneth Chan has got 3 votes. So Mr. Ip Kok Kim is the elected chairman of this Bills Committee. Mr. Ip, would you please come up? I thank you all for your support. Next, we will deal with the election of a deputy chairman. Do you think that we need a deputy chairman? Any nominations? Mr. Alan Leung. I nominate Mr. Kenneth Chan. He agrees? Any seconders? Mr. Wu Chi-wai seconds. Any other nominations? If not, I announce that Mr. Dr. Kenneth Chan elected Deputy Chairman of this committee. Now we start the meeting. We will meet with the administration. We have with us Secretary for Food and Health, Dr. Ko Wing Man. We have the Deputy Secretary of the Bureau, Mr. Christopher Wong, Ms. Diane Wong, Principal Assistant Secretary for Food and Health, Ms. Phyllis Ko, Senior Assistant Law Draftsman of the Department of Justice, Ms. Chu Lan Ying, Assistant Director of the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department, Mr. Thomas Leung, Assistant Director of the Buildings Department, Ms. Olga Lam, Assistant Director of the Lands Department, Ms. Christine Tse, Assistant Director of Planning of the Planning Department, Ms. Cindy Churk, Government Counsel of the DOJ, and as I said, Ms. Phyllis Ko, Senior Assistant Law Draftsman of the Department of Justice. In relation to locations of Columbaria and the supply of niches, they have been hot topics recently. They are issues close to a lot of people's heart. It's controversial. We see that there is a great demand for niches. Now we have this private Columbaria bill. I believe that we all would like to see it enacted. We will scrutinize the bill, and we hope that the bill will meet public aspirations. I will now defer to the Secretary to give us a presentation of the bill. Thank you. The administration has all along adopted a three-pronged approach to implement the policy on the burial and Columbaria. That is, through green burials, increasing the supply of public niches, and thirdly, the issue at hand today, regulation of private Columbaria. This bill, called Private Columbaria Bill, is an important step in our policy. The objective is to make sure that all Columbaria will meet all the requirements. We also aim at protecting consumer interest and ensure a sustainable mode of operation. I'm not going to go into the detail of the bill yet, but we have conducted some analysis. When the bill is enacted, no one is allowed to operate a Columbarium in Hong Kong unless the Columbarium is covered by a license, a temporary suspension of liability license, or an exemption. Without a license, one cannot sell niches. And I'd like to make it clear that when it comes to the definition of pre-built Columbarium, there is a time set for the bill announcement time, which is 8 a.m. on 18th of June 2014. This is the cutoff time for determining the status of pre-bill Columbarium operation. If the Columbarium is operated before the 1st of January 1990 and after the bill announcement time, the operator has stopped selling niches. If all other requirements are met, the operator can, after the enactment of the bill, apply for a TSOL, that is temporary suspension of liability. For the other Columbaria, they have to obtain a license before they can continue operation. Under the bill, private Columbarium should meet land conditions, buildings, the requirements under the buildings ordinance, and requirements under the town planning ordinance. If the operator needs time to meet all the statutory requirements, they may apply for a TSOL from the licensing board. During the effective time of the TSOL, the Columbarium cannot sell new or vacant niches. And I'd like to say that starting on the 18th of June 2014, there is a notification scheme requiring all known Columbaria to supply information. The information supply will serve as a basis for the licensing board to decide which are pre-built Columbaria and whether these Columbaria are eligible to apply for the various instruments under the bill, that is TSOL or exemption. We have received 130 replies, out of which 118 of them are included. In the private Columbaria information disclosed by the Development Bureau on the 18th of June, which this accounts for 97% of all private Columbaria. And the food and health, the FEHD is now collating the information received. And they will vet the information received. And in due course, the FEHD will announce the list of participating Columbaria on their website. For those Columbaria that have existed for a long time and they have the intention to make an application, they have the situation have to be frozen at the bill announcement time. Some stakeholders ask for more flexible approach. That is, niches sold before the bill announcement time, and these niches will have ashes interred after the bill should also be included. And for these Columbaria, they do not have to meet all government requirements, and they don't have to apply for a license to continue operation. However, they cannot sell existing or new niches. Illegal structures, if any, should be verified by authorized persons, and if they are certified to be safe, they may be retained. We do think that we need a ring fence requirement to prevent abuse. Say, for example, bogus transaction, which serves as a chance for people to do under-the-table deals. Some stakeholders agree with our stringent approach in order to ensure fairness. All information obtained by the FEHD under the various schemes and programs will reflect the actual situation of the Columbaria. They include sold but unoccupied niches. This will give a comprehensive picture to the FEHD under the premise of abuse prevention. unsold but unoccupied niches and how to deal with these is something we keep an open mind on. We will discuss about the best approach with the Bills Committee, but we would like to remind the public that it is unknown whether the bill will be endorsed. Members of the public, if they have bought niches but have not interred ashes, they should liaise with the operator to discuss about the transition arrangements. There is a window period before the enactment. There are views expressed. They are concerned that individual operators may make use of the window period to promote and sell their niches. Some operators claim that after the enactment, the price of niches will definitely increase and the operators will definitely get a license. Otherwise, it will be a full refund or an exchange of another licensed niche. The private Columbarium is 100% legal. And since it is unknown whether these Columbaria will be licensed, and the maximum number of niches of each Columbarium is still unknown, the administration will, through API and press release, make clear that if Columbaria try to sell niches before the uncertainties are confirmed, it will be undesirable. Members of the public should be aware of the risks because they may suffer loss if the operator fails to obtain a license. So they should consider short-term use. And operators should abide by the Trade Descriptions Ordinance, that is misrepresentation or misleading statements about the product should not be made. They have to abide by the Trade Description Ordinance requirements. Members of the public should find out whether the operator is operating within the law, and they have to make sure that they fully understand all the details. Say, for example, contract rescission and refund arrangements. In relation to irregular Columbaria, there are concerns expressed in relation to applications for exemption and application for extension to expand. I'd like to explain that when granting exemption, the plans should clearly stipulate the area under the exemption. Under this special arrangement, the exempted area will cover, in general, the areas where there are niches at the time of the bill announcement. They are structures containing niches or supporting and necessary or ancillary structures. The number of niches will also be stipulated in the bill. The situation frozen at the time of the bill announcement time should not deteriorate. The licensing board should be satisfied that the premises meet all the requirements. When it comes to application, they have to meet lands and planning requirements and also building safety requirements. They should also submit a management plan. If applications about change of land use is to be made, they have to supply all the information, especially a traffic impact assessment report. And they should also address all the views expressed by departments. The Town Planning Board will take into account public opinion expressed. The future licensing board will, at the time of vetting applications, take into account public opinion. Before the enactment of the bill, departments will continue to be vigilant and enforce against irregular columbaria in accordance with the law. This is to curb unlicensed columbaria to proliferate. Columbaria operating after the bill announcement time and before the enactment, they do not have the eligibility to apply for TSOL or exemptions. So this type of columbaria should meet building, town planning and lands requirement before they are allowed to operate and sell niches. Licensed undertakers have also expressed a concern. There are also concerns in relation to licensed undertakers. There are 81 licensed undertakers being allowed to store ashes at their premises, but there is no maximum time period. License issued after December 2008 prohibits undertakers to store ashes at their premises. The bill will not cover the 81 undertakers because they are covered by Cap 136 Public Services and Municipal Ordinance, Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance. There are conditions imposed on the 81 undertakers in relation to temporary storage of ashes. They should minimize nuisance costs to the environment. The conditions may also include the maximum number of niches of ashes stored and their locations. All the information should be in the register, and that is also for the inspection of the FEHD. So we do not let it's not the case that we let undertakers off the hook.
When I moved the second reading of the bill in my speech, in relation to the outstanding problems inherited from the past, we may not be able to provide a be-all and end-all solution to everything. Sometimes some operators and users may complain against the administration for forcing them to close their business. There may also be the disposal of the ashes. I have to point out that we have to strike the right balance so as to address the concerns of the operators as well as the descendants of their ancestors. Now, for the private columbarium, we would like to be pragmatic. When we deal with the regulation of private columbaria, we have to be reasonable and sensible. We'll do our utmost to come up with something which is reasonable to regulate the system and to strike a balance. Now, we are having the three-pronged approach. For them to be effective, we must have public support. We hope that through public education, we can change the mindset of the people so that they would opt for green burials. And we hope that with the support of the community, we can have more public columbaria in the 18 districts. The licensing regime would mean that consumers and the operators can know how to operate and how to deal with the matter. And we'll support the bill, and help members will also support the bill and have early completion of the scrutiny of the bill so that we can enact the provisions ASAP. Thank you, Secretary. It is quite a lengthy bill. You can see the thickness of the bill itself, and the Secretary has also addressed certain concerns in the community. Well, the legislative brief has also set out quite a large number of issues for us to consider. So I would like to seek your views as to how we should take forward the deliberation. Maybe we can raise our concerns, and then we can have a number of topics for more focused discussion. And then, of course, we have to consider the need for a public hearing Therefore, we have to find time to do that. As far as the timing is concerned, we are now towards the end of July, and then in August and in September, we are supposed to have the summer recess for LegCo. Secretary, yes, we know that this should be done ASAP, but then it isn't so urgent that we have to have meetings during the summer holiday. Am I right? If that is the case, I think it's better for us to focus on the work in October when we come back. Secretary, Mr. Chairman, for listening to me, yes. On the one hand, there is a widespread community concern. We don't want to drag our feet for too long. But then, is it so urgent that we have to complete the task in a month or two? I'm totally at your disposal. I respect your views. Well, on the one hand, we want to do it as early as possible. On the other hand, we hope that in the process, the majority of the members of the Bills Committee should be able to attend the meetings. Well, in this case, I think we'll come back in October when we resume. Maybe we can have more frequent meetings in October. But in the interim, maybe we aren't going to hold meetings. As to the scheduling of a public hearing, etc., I think we need to work it out with the Secretariat, but we will certainly be holding public hearings. I've mentioned that for the papers that we have got, first of all, we have got a LegCo brief. That's from the Bureau. 9 topics have been sort of set out. Please take a look of the paper. It is paper FHCR 2/3751/07. So we've got a LegCo brief. 9 topics have been listed. First of all, compliance with statutory and government requirements. Second, grandfathering arrangements for pre-bill Columbaria. Thirdly, certain enforcement provisions not applicable. Fourth, consumer protection. Fifth, proper handling of ashes upon cessation of a Columbarium operation. Sixth, exclusions and exemptions. Seventh, proposed licensing board. Eighth, offences. Ninth, commencement and appeals. So probably we can sort of direct our attention to each of the 9 topics. If you have got in mind some other topics, I'm sure they can be added to the list. Probably we can have more effective discussion. Of course, the Secretary's speech has a lot of content, but probably it can be sort of discussed under the various topics. A number of members have raised their hands, Gary Chen, Tommy Cheung, etc. But first of all, let me check with you whether you would agree with my proposed approach, and do you propose any other topics? Mr. James Toh, Mr. Chairman, well, I see it this way. For those who are concerned about the case, I think they're in the best position to help us to focus our discussion. So maybe in the interim, we should publicize our intended public hearings. Chair, I think you are sort of proposing that we have a discussion framework. This is because there may be a lot of people interested in coming to the public hearing. Some may want to focus on a specific point, while others may want to give an overall view. Maybe the related organizations have got 19 topics or 24 altogether. I think it's better if we sort of sound them out than thinking in the abstract. The administration has been looking at it for many years, so the government must have some ideas. I think it's better if we can sort of gather the views of those who are stakeholders. Well, perhaps we should base our discussion on the framework of 9 topics, and then after hearing the public's views, we can always add more topics to the framework. And for today, we sort of have an overall discussion. Members, if you would like to raise any particular topics, please do so. If you've got anything to add to the 9 in the bill or in the legislative brief, you can always tell us. James Toh, actually, I mean, we don't need to specify the number of topics today. Exactly, we've got 9 in the legislative brief. We can adopt them as the basics. The basis. We can always add to the number or reduce the number. Mr. Chairman, it appears that it's better for us to listen to the public and then we divide the discussion sessions into a number of topics. Now you say that there are 9 topics, but then it won't actually affect what we're going to do in the next month or 2. That is whether you've got 9 topics or not. No, I don't think there's any contradiction. Would that be acceptable to you? No, the trust in the government is at a low level. I think it's better for us not to be so rigid about adopting the 9 topics from the government's legislative brief. Members, concerning the bill as a whole, would you like to say anything? Would you like to tell us your views concerning the bill as a whole? Mr. Gary Chen, I think in the Secretary's speech, he has told us about the gist of the bill. I just wonder if the Secretary can give us a copy of his speech. I think it will be of great reference value. That's my first request. Second, Mr. Chairman, for us to approach the bill, I think we need more background information. Say, for example, the total number of private columbaria, distribution, etc., and then public columbaria, whether there are still unoccupied niches, and what about the number of niches which are meant for temporary storage. I think we need such information for our next meeting. Basically, in principle, it will be good to have a regulatory regime. However, when we start to introduce a regulatory regime, then for the Columbaria under Part B or List B, they may not be able to get a license. Most citizens would opt for a niche in the public columbaria. When they fail, then they will go to the private columbaria. When the bill is enacted, as the Secretary has said, some columbaria may have to cease operation. What are we going to do with the ashes? Now we have been told that there is temporary storage. Where is the storage? Where are the storage spaces? What about the distribution? Can the Secretary tell us about the aftermath of the bill enactment? Say, for example, there is a large number of private columbaria closing down. Are we able to deal with the temporary storage?
The Secretary mentioned just now about something. After the administration has announced about the legislation, a lot of unscrupulous operators told consumers that you better buy as soon as possible, otherwise there will be a short supply or the prices will hike. You said that you would use the Trade Descriptions Ordinance to regulate these Columbaria. You also advise the consumers, but if they indeed encounter such situation, how is it going to be dealt with, and how is consumer rights being protected if some Columbaria continue to operate without a license? There will be a black market operating because indeed there is a huge demand. How are you going to combat that? My third question is that Columbaria may apply for TSOL, and in the document it says that there may be one extension. If in a few years' time there is a shortage of public niches, will you allow a repeated renewal for these TSOLs? Secretary, I thank Mr. Chan for his questions. First of all, he asked for information, but I'd like to make it clear that when it comes to the situation of public niches, of course it's something that we will be able to supply you the information. We rely on the two lists promulgated by the Development Bureau. There was a registration after the announcement on the 18th of June, but it will take time for us to collate the information. If we give you the incomplete information, it will not be desirable. But at this stage, we are able to supply you with information related to public niches. For private ones, please refer to the two lists promulgated by the Development Bureau. Well, in relation to your second issue, it is indeed a thorny one. If the bill is endorsed or enacted the way we plan it to, or in the form that is that we've planned it to, we would like there will be some flexible arrangements. There is the special arrangement, and there is also the TSOL. For a period of time, Columbaria who that are eligible to apply for a license will have some time for them to prepare to meet all the requirements. So there is time for them to make preparation in relation to the ashes. But for some, there is a slim chance that they are going to get a license. When the licensing board, upon reading all the information, decides not to grant a license, we will immediately enforce the law to close them down. We have in place an arrangement for members of the public to temporarily store ashes. We have a capacity of thousands. We can make use of the time before the bill is enacted to expand our capacity. But we can at most expand it to several tens of thousands. If the bill is enacted the way it is, I believe that we will be able to deal with the volume. Not now, because we can still make preparation using the time before the enactment. We will be able to deal with ashes that are displaced as a result of the enactment if they are under several tens of thousands. Columbaria will have to fulfill certain obligations when they close. They have to put in place arrangements, notify relatives. And if in the end there is still ashes left unclaimed, we will put them into temporary storage. For some Columbaria, I can't say that they are irregular, but they don't meet all the requirements, and if they make use of the window period to promote sale, I'm sure you notice our publicity effort to counter their promotional campaign. But I don't have a solution to prevent them from selling niches. We are very transparent. I have told you all our concern. The public are well informed. I hope that with our high transparency and the public being so informed, the impact of these sale will be kept to a minimum. Will you talk about the temporary storage capacity, thousands or tens of thousands? Can you give us a figure? We can give you the figure now. We have about 8,000. We can accommodate 8,000 urns. In 2 years' time, we will be able to accommodate at least 40,000 urns. We have Lee Chuk-yen, Tommy Zhang, and Alan Leung. There aren't many members. I am not going to limit the time. Mr. Lee Chuk-yen. Thank you. Of course, the Labour Party supports the legislation because we've been waiting for many years. There are a lot of irregular, unlawful Columbaria operating. I'm concerned about the exemption. The exemption provisions states that if they have existed for a long time, they can get exemption. How do you draw the line? In the past 6 or 7 years, there are more and more residents complaining about illegal Columbaria causing the nuisance. Well, if it is located in government land, they will complain to the lands department. If they breach planning requirements, they will lodge a complaint to the planning department. But still, they continue to operate. They find ways and loopholes to operate. That is unfair to consumers either, because that itself is an illegal Columbarium. Yet they continue to solicit business. You'd say that there are going to be exemptions. I don't know whether in a way you're encouraging the mushrooming of illegal Columbaria. They will hold the ashes as hostage. Is it the reason why you don't want to phase them all out? You said that you will phase some of them out. How do you draw the line? For those that are heavily complained about, are you going to do something about it? Whereas there are some others that have received no complaint, you will allow that to continue to operate since they have been continuing for a long time. If you give irregular ones exemption, you're sending out a message that you can continue to break the law because you will get exemption. How do you draw the line? I would like to first clarify this point. A lot of people are concerned about our enforcement. I would like to make it clear on behalf of the department. Before the enactment of the bill, all departments, as I said at the outset, will, in accordance with existing legislation, enforce the law. That is very clear. Well, if other departments would like to speak, they may do so, because I don't have eyes on the back of my head. In relation to exemptions and what the criteria are, this is an objective set of criteria set down in 1990. We draw the line at 1990. Why 1990? Because there was a shortage of public niches. As a result, private Columbaria, including those that are not regulated, mushroomed. And that is the case in the past decade or so. We don't have an exact time. If we're talking about a dozen years or so, no more than 20. So by drawing the line at 1990, we would have excluded the new ones that are operating solely for profit. This is objective, albeit a little bit arbitrary. We have taken into account the situation in the past 10 or 20 years. Some say that some Columbaria existed before 1990 at a small scale, and in recent days there are, say for example, more shareholders, and there was rapid expansion. We understand that there are some Columbaria that are like this, but as to the number, we have to wait until we have got all the information under the registration scheme. We would like you to see that we have at least done some work. As I've said, we can't completely resolve the problem. We require, we want to freeze the number. They might have been operating outside the law. But since the situation has been frozen, the situation will not get worse. And as to whether we decide on the number of complaints, yes, you have a point. But when it comes to enforcement, there will be difficulties. If members in the discussion of the bill find an alternative that address all the enforcement difficulties and the lack of objectivity, I am all ears. To be honest, my first reaction is that it's not difficult to find it. Because if you base solely on number of complaints, there is not much objectivity. Well, when I said based on the number of complaints, you receive a complaint, then you find that it's irregular, not necessarily breaking the law. When it comes to the year 1990, they might have existed prior to 1990. And the number may be small, but after 1990, they mushroomed. You will exempt the group that existed before 1990 and mushroomed after 1990. We know that there is a small number operated by temples. They did not do it for profit, but later they start doing it for profit. I know which case you're talking about. Well, yeah, you know, and I protested against it. That particular temple occupied government land as well. So there are many irregularities. Apart from using 1990 as a criterion, well, would you close down all those that started after 1990, and those that have received numerous complaints, would you in particular close those down?
Secretary, allow me to divide the question into two parts. First of all, you have said that sometimes a facility might have a small number of niches and then the facility mushroomed. I don't think you are saying that we should eradicate it once and for all across the board. I think you're more interested in those that are having irregular or irregularities. Well, they have to meet the various requirements set out in the bill. Say, for example, if it is a matter of breaching the conditions, well, at least the structure has to be structural safe. It has to be verified by an authorized person. So we don't just have a single criteria, namely 1990. There are other conditions to be met. And then, unless we can design provisions in the bill such that we have got objective criteria, the bill can't be written in such a way that we are specific about a particular case. Now in the bill, we have got something quite objective, and it is an objectively decided date. Now, we do allow for certain relaxation, but it is not unconditional. So we believe that the approach that we've adopted is already the best that we can come up with. As to the one referred to by Mr. Lee, unless it is objective, it can be included in the bill, and it won't give people an impression that we are targeting at a particular person or operator. Tommy Cheung, just a quick point. I don't intend to ask any questions today. In the beginning, the Secretary said that he would like us to do it ASAP. I think any policy secretary would make the same appeal. I think he has taken 2 policy secretaries to work on this area, and it is such a lengthy bill. It is quite uncommon recently. Now, I would like to say that this is going to be a very difficult task when it comes to the scrutiny of the bill. This is because there are many stakeholders and the interests have to be balanced. We are talking about residents, the descendants, whose ancestors' ashes have been interred, operators, etc. I am never in favor of having too much work done when we are actually having the summer recess. I support what Mr. James Toh has suggested. We should start with a public hearing. I'm not working against you. I am also in favor of having our discussion divided into topics, moving from one to another. But of course, we can't sort of rule out the possibility that we need to go back to a previously discussed topic. But then first of all, let's have a public hearing, get the views from the stakeholders, and then we can be more focused on the various issues in the bill. In fact, we have a lot of panel members of the Food Safety and Environmental Hygiene panel. For many years, we have had discussion of this topic. I think across the political spectrum, we are aware of the impact of the bill on the different stakeholders. Yes, we have to spend time on this bill, but we mustn't allow this to go beyond July 2017. It may sound a long time, but then we are sort of finishing the session. And then even if we start in October, and if it has to take us all the way to July next year, it won't and shouldn't be regarded as dragging our feet. I hope the Secretary won't have the mindset that we should be quick on everything. I don't think we can pull together a hasty job. Secretary, I agree with Mr. Zhang. I think he has a point. Yes, we do need a public hearing. Alan Leung. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the idea of having a public hearing because a lot is involved and many consumers feel that they are at a loss and they don't know much more than before the second reading of the bill. It has been reported in the papers that as of the 30th of June, there were already 125 applications for exemption. Were you caught by surprise to see that there are so many applications for exemption? I'm, of course, not in a position to tell whether the information is accurate or not, but according to the design of the bill, now you are talking about those Columbaria already in operation before the 1st of January 1990, and then on the 18th of June 2014, that is the cut-off day, and then the operators must have stopped the sale of niches. So I just wonder whether there could have been so many applications. So please tell us whether you were also surprised. If the answer is in the affirmative, I want to know if the Bureau can think of a reason. Another question is, I want to know about the number of applications for TSOL, temporary suspension of liability status. Now, according to your policy design, we should be talking about a group of operators who intend to take out a license, and then the TSOL can last for maximum 3 years. When compared with 125 operators asking for exemption, of course there may be many more than that number now, since a month has already passed. So please tell us, for these two groups of operators, what is the difference between them? Why is it that some would opt for an exemption while some would opt for a TSOL? There must be reason, there must be some logic behind their act. So can you tell us about the difference between the two groups of operators? I think on this occasion, I can say with certainty that the report is wrong. This is because for the number of replies, I think it is about the notification scheme. We have come up with this notification scheme. This is before we get the statutory backing, we would like to have something in place to freeze it. We don't actually have the statutory power to take a snapshot and freeze it, but at least we want to have something so that there will be a strong incentive for the operators to cooperate with us within the notification scheme. Now, the information given to us within the notification scheme will be of great value in the future applications. If they are not cooperative, in fact, it may work to their disadvantage in the future. For the notification scheme, earlier on we received 120 plus, and the latest information is that we have got 130 replies. Among them, 118 of them are already within Part A and Part B of the list kept by the Bureau of Development. Some were not previously known to us. Now they sort of raise their hands up and tell us that they are operating a Columbarium. It's not that we're inviting applications for the three documents: exemption, TSOL license. We have to wait for the enactment of the bill. Even on day one, we're not in a position to receive any applications. We need to spend a few months' time to set up the so-called licensing board. And then we will tell the public that the bill has been enacted, the licensing authority has been established, and then we are ready to receive applications for either one of the three instruments. As to why there has been this error in the reports, probably this is because some operators are already sending out news, or they are thinking about their position, that is, whether they are able to get an exemption as per the bill, or failing that, or even if they can meet the requirements to get an exemption, but since there's still a lot of unsold niches, so they are not ready and they're not willing to get an exemption, they may prefer to have a TSOL. Well, maybe the operators are having an internal discussion, and then they tell each other whether they want to get an exemption or whether they would like to have a TSOL. So the figures have been mixed up with the number of replies that the FHD has received under the notification scheme. To answer Mr. Leung's question, yes, we are also interested in the information, but we need to verify the information received first, and then we have an analysis, and then we can share the information with members. Mr. Leung, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary, other than asking the members of the public who intend to buy a niche to get their own legal advice, I want to know what else the administration can offer to help the potential clients so that the consumers will know what to do, because currently they just don't know what to do. They can't tell. Now, you ask them to get professional advice, but then you have to pay a fee to get a professional body to give them advice. And then for the uncertainty means that somebody may buy a niche and yet he cannot have it occupied, or he has to remove the ashes of the ancestors. You should know that it is quite something bad for the citizens. They have been under the shadow of uncertainty for so many years, and now even with the bill, you're saying that they need to seek legal advice or professional advice. In the future, they have to face the problem of removing the ashes, or even if a niche has been bought, it cannot be occupied. Does it mean that they can only have themselves to blame? Now, you have also told us that we have been told that the bill requires meticulous scrutiny. So in the interim, what are you going to do so as to help them to ease their worries? Mr. Leung, you're right. We need to strike a balance. When Mr. Chung gave his comments, I think he has a point. We need to study the bill carefully. We want to study the bill carefully, and at the same time, we don't want it to take too much time. Prior to the enactment of the bill, indeed, some people will feel that they are at a loss. Our advice for the citizens is that if somebody would like to buy a niche or to lease a niche, I think it's better to have a written contract to set out the details of the niche involved, the information, his rights, and what is important is that in the event of the cessation of operation of the Columbarium, what sort of safeguards he will be entitled to. It's better to make it clear in advance, otherwise you may regret in the future. Well, for the administration, the only thing we can offer is temporary storage. But of course, we hope that not everybody has to turn to us to make use of the temporary storage of ashes. As I have said, it is quite limited.
Any other members who would like to ask general questions? Any? If not, well, if we start discussion on specific topics, it may not be suitable. Members expressed the wish to have public hearings to collect public views. How about this? If there are no further questions, we will adjourn the meeting. I'd like to seek your views on public hearing. You want to do it between Monday and Friday, or you would like to do it on Saturdays? If we do it on Monday, between Monday and Friday, it may clash with other committees or panels. And when do you want the public hearing? Before the next legislative session starts? I think it starts on the 8th of October. Mr. Lee Choi-Yan. Before that, don't have to wait till after the 8th of October. Maybe before the 8th we have more available rooms and less clash with other meetings. We don't have to wait till after the 8th or for a Saturday. Mr. Porte. Well, from what Mr. Leung said, that there are too many temporary measures and it's not ideal, just like the situation of the cooling measures. And I do think that weekend will be better for the public. There may be some people who work and they are concerned about this issue. Maybe we can pick a Saturday before the start of the legislative year to speed things up. Mr. Alan Leung, what's your view? I agree. Well, I think it depends on the number of people turning up. You have to ensure that we have enough members. Otherwise, it will be unfair to operators and individuals attending. But if we choose a weekday, we cannot accommodate those who work. Well, I think it depends on how many people will attend. I think for operators, it doesn't make a difference. But for consumers, they would prefer Saturdays. Perhaps I will talk to the clerk. We prefer a date before the 8th of October. Not too much earlier than that, because members may not be able to attend. Perhaps a week before the 8th of October, most of our members will be in Hong Kong. And as to whether we use a weekday or a weekend, we will sleep on it. I think they would like to have an opportunity so that more people can attend. Secretary, do you have anything to say? We will cooperate with the Bills Committee. I will talk to the clerk. Let's see if we can find a room and a date a week before the 8th. Next is any other business. I don't think there is any other business. Date of the meeting next time is to be fixed. I think that will be the public hearing. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.